Ladies and gentlemen, it is episode number 36 here on the Primetime Rundown, the National Hockey League Free Agent Frenzy special here on the Eastern Observer and also on the Blackjack TV Blackjack TV channel on Zingo channel 199. Unfortunately, we're not on I-95 tonight due to some high school football, but we cannot thank you enough to those that are just joining us here this evening. We're going to be talking about hockey the whole way through. We have some good guests with us as well. And how can I forget to introduce my guys? Alongside my guys, Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We can't thank you enough for joining us here on this gorgeous Friday evening on Free Agent Frenzy Day, guys. A ton of stuff has happened today, not as much as anticipated. And I think a lot of it has to do with, we are in the midst of a global pandemic and money is, let's call it, hard to find right now. And that goes with every single National Hockey League franchise. So there has been a couple of retirements as well. And that's where we're going to get started with. Ian, Rob, first off, how are you guys? And how was your day today watching Free Agent Frenzy?
We were talking before the show started. I was actually a little underwhelmed. We've seen a lot of low-level signings. I think 6 of the top 7 free agents. Obviously, we'll get into Jacob Markstrom a little bit later. But 6 of the top 7 free agents are still out there waiting to be signed. So a little underwhelming when the free agency period started at 12 o'clock. But still, hey, it's free agency.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's always an exciting day. It's like Christmas morning in the NHL when it's free agency day. I mean, there was definitely a lot of action today. Not exactly the big names, but, there's still a little bit. There's enough for us to talk about, I'm sure. And even if there wasn't, we make it work because that's just how we are on the best show on the Blackjack Media Network anyway.
That's right. Exactly. That is the utmost truth there, Rob DeLuca. And you know what? The last time we actually had our good friend and our little insider, the fourth period's Dennis Bernstein, he's going to come back on. He was actually on here during, or as he called it, Christmas Eve, and that was the day before the restart to play came back. So I think when we come back, or when he comes on here in about an hour and a half, currently he's on Sirius XM right now, doing big boy things. I think we have to wish him a happy new year. And I think that's what it is. League year, brand new league year starts now. And we just don't know when hockey's going to start up again. But again, we are extremely grateful that we have free agent hockey. So guys, let's get to it. Some retirements, as we said in the open, Ian, Rob, Justin Williams, our childhood has come and gone. Rob DeLuca, you have some personal experience with Justin Williams, Mr. Game 7, of course, taking down your Devils in 2012, and actually some personal experience with us too, because we actually had the leading assist getter on his goal back in 2006, the game-winning goal, or the empty netter, if you will, when he was with the Carolina Hurricanes. Brett Hedigan, he was on our show too. So Justin Williams, really an amazing career. Started off, LA, Carolina, the list goes on. Philadelphia. Ian, talk about Justin Williams and what he's meant to the NHL.
Oh, I mean, you said it yourself, Joey. Mr. Game 7, 7 goals, 8 assists, 15 points in 9 career Game 7. So he certainly earned himself the nickname for the reasons that I just laid out. 19 seasons in the NHL, a Conn Smythe Trophy winner in 2014, much to the chagrin of me. Obviously, my team, the New York Rangers, were on the losing end of that year. But 3 Stanley Cups, 2 with the Kings, 1 came against the Rangers, 1 came against Rob's Devils, and then obviously the one he had, the first of his career, that came with the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, look, the guy's had a career that certainly paves the way for a Hall of Fame induction. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you talk about a guy like Justin Williams, you really just think about if you come to one word, success. Because this man, like, how can you have a more decorated NHL resume than Justin Williams did? He moved around the league a little bit, but man, when he got to wherever he went, really, did he ever get it done? Plays in Carolina, wins a Stanley Cup, scores the empty netter to seal the deal. He certainly gave me a lot of problems, not only in 2012 in the Cup final, but even in that series in 2006. He helped take out my Devils yet again, a team that was primed that year. They were done. They took us out in 5 games. It was a rough series, but you know what? 3 cups. It says it all. No doubt, first ballot Hall of Famer in my book. But I mean, maybe he might not be first ballot. I think he personally should be. But it will all find out in due time in the next few years. And honestly, what a career! What a way to go! Not exactly the way he'd want to go out, I'm sure, in a weird year like this one. But you know what? Maybe that was a sign to him to say, you know what? Now is as good as any of the time to get out of here.
Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
And I think to Rob's point, I think, and the other that we still have to bring up as well in terms of leaving, in terms of with respect to the pandemic is, and I'm sure we're going to mention him next, is Matt Niskanen. I mean, a big part of why he's stepping down is because he really can't deal with the idea of spending another season away from his family. I mean, we don't know right now whether or not the 2020-2021 season, which is really just going to be the 2021 season because it seems like the year's going to get started on January 1st. However, Matt Niskanen I'm sure it was hard enough for guys in the NHL, the NBA, that had to play in bubbles for the better part of 3 months and be away from their families. So this is for a guy like Niskanen, who I believe was turning 33. I completely get it. I mean, you could be playing a whole full season, a playoff run, again, away from your family. Trust me, like you said, Rob, with respect to Justin Williams, it's a hard way to go out with respect to the year that we're having, but it's certainly understandable.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And you know what? You guys brought up the best point in terms of the uncertainty, and it really has affected a lot of NHLers around the league. But it really affected one player to the point of calling it or hanging up the skates, if you will. And that is Matt Niskanen, former Philadelphia Flyers, Washington Capitals, and Pittsburgh Penguins defenseman, who was making at the time or this upcoming season $5.75 million average annual value. And, he put that aside. Currently right now, according to our good friends at Cap Friendly, he has not officially signed those papers or filed those retirement papers. So the cap number, you figure, will be an additional $5.75 million when he does officially sign those papers. But again, really difficult for these players all across the league, but also, guys, really difficult for Philadelphia because he was a big part of their penalty kill.
Yeah, I mean, look, Matt Niskanen, he's been a big piece of whatever team he's played on. I mean, remember, he started his career in Dallas. He was obviously a key player in all those playoff runs with the Penguins. Didn't win a cup with the Penguins, but remember, I mean, he was there when the structure of guys like Chris Letang first came over to the Penguins was there. Then he goes over to Washington and has that run with the Capitals, which ultimately led to the cup 2 years ago. But again, he's a guy who has that playoff experience, and the Flyers are going to miss him as a result of it. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, look, this definitely took us by surprise. They're 33 years old. It seemed like he still had plenty left in the tank, but sometimes you get the unexpected in 2020, and that was certainly one of the unexpecteds, especially for a guy at his age. Like, especially defensemen. Defensemen usually are able to hang in there a little bit longer, so you gotta wonder if maybe this was personal for him, or if maybe he just doesn't. That you can speculate all you want, but that ultimately is the decision he comes to, and you respect it.
I personally believe exactly what Ian did say. It had to do with family, and he's flat out said it as well. Is that he didn't say it in as many words, but it's very evident that these guys have left their families for the better part of 2 months, and you don't see them for 60+ days. Again, we also saw what happened with Tuukka Rask, but obviously a little bit of a different scenario where there was rumors going around. I don't know if that was exactly true, but his daughter was not in the best health, and his little girl. That is something that obviously Ian can attest to because he is a father as well. I'm sure that if it was either hockey or if it was his little girl, I believe the latter would be there wouldn't even be a thought. It would be
there wouldn't be a question.
Home and done.
Listen, I haven't been away from my family, I don't think, for longer than a couple of days. And that's from, wherever I was working at the time that I needed to be remote for a couple of days and traveled. I remember shortly after my daughter was born, I was in Vegas for a couple of days. So it was hard enough being away for 2 days. I can only imagine what it's like to be away for 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, it's really beyond brutal. But again, you have to do what's best for your family. And as a lot of people say, hockey is second and sports are second, and family does come first. So it does look like, actually, according to Cap Friendly, the team, actually, the Philadelphia Flyers, that is, has about $8.685 million of cap space. They actually did take off Matt Niskanen, the aforementioned Niskanen. So that is how much cap space they have left. But you know what? We'll see what happens, because, again, there really was not a lot of movement in Philly. But let's get started with a little bit closer to home, guys. And, really, I think the biggest thing here is let's talk a little bit about the New Jersey Devils. And this is something that there were a couple of trades here. There was, there's some rumors about Marc-Andre Fleury heading over here. Ryan Murray was traded for a 5th-round pick. Not a lot of free agency moves in New Jersey. I don't believe there were any. Rob, if you can attest to that, or
none today so far.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, because again, there's not a lot going on in the tri-state area, but let's hear about the analysis from your Devils, where they acquired at one point a top defenseman.
Yeah, I mean, look, this was a good, effective move by new general manager Tom Fitzgerald, bringing in Ryan Murray, who, look, back problems aside, when he is healthy, he is a super effective defenseman. Very, very good. I could not be happier that it only cost us a 5th-round pick, and because thanks to Buffalo, we now still have a 5th-round pick, because Buffalo traded us their 5th-round pick for about 7 games of Wayne Simmons, and that turned out well as he went to Toronto. So thanks for that one, Buffalo. You gave us a little leverage to work with. But yeah, look, I'm super excited to see Ryan Murray in a Devils uniform. He's not the best offensively, like he's not really known for being an offensive defenseman. But on the other hand, the defensive aspect of being able to keep the puck out of the net, this is something the Devils have lacked for a very, very long time, and it is super exciting to see us heading in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a matter of time, because, again, with all these talks about Fleury needing to be moved, there's the unrestricted free agent market for goaltenders is really crazy. What we've seen today, we've seen a few shifts in terms of goaltenders, but also with the draft, which we'll get to later on. We saw Matt Murray get traded over to Ottawa. We saw Tristan Jarry get signed, or him signing a new contract in Pittsburgh, a 3-year deal. Henrik Lundqvist going to Washington. Jacob Markstrom going to Calgary. Edmonton holding off right now and saying, actually, on Rogers just a few hours ago, saying that they're most likely going to be adding a goaltender within 24 hours, end quote. So we'll have to wait and see and possibly speculate on who could be heading to Edmonton. Also, again, there's the hometown kid, Keith Kincaid, came home to the New York Rangers. But let's go back, actually, to what we were talking about with the Pittsburgh Penguins just a few minutes ago, and keep it in the Metropolitan Division. And Tristan Jarry signed his RFA deal, as we did say, I believe about $3 million per. And it's for, I believe, about 3 years. So it's $3.5 million or $3.5 million times 3. And now Casey DeSmith is going to be the backup there. Let's try and discuss this. Did Jim Rutherford make the right call in trading Murray and not Jarry?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes. We have to remember one thing, that look at the salary cap situation from this past year. Matt Murray was making around $3.75 million. Tristan Jarry was still on his entry-level contract at $675,000. When you look at the stats between Tristan Jarry and Matt Murray, now keep in mind they split up their regular season games this year equally. Tristan Jarry was top 10 in the National Hockey League among goalies in goals against average and save percentage, albeit both goalies, Murray and Fleury, not Murray and Fleury, Murray and Jarry won the same amount of games. But you had a young goaltender who you're now going to pay Jarry the same amount as what you've been paying Matt Murray. So Ottawa has now doubled the amount that Pittsburgh would have had to pay them, which they couldn't have afforded to pay them with only, about $3 or $4 million available in cap space.
Right.
So in Tristan Jarry's case, you've got a goalie that ranked among the top 10 goalies in the NHL in two big statistical categories where Murray did not. And Jarry was clearly maybe not by a large margin, but he was the better goaltender overall when you look at it from a numbers perspective, and then you look at the way Matt Murray played in the playoffs against Montreal. So I'm going to say yes, it was the right move, because now you're paying Tristan Jarry as well the same amount of money you've been paying Matt Murray for the last couple of years. So I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, and that's something else too. Is that we look at the moves that Jim Rutherford has made to really kind of reassemble his roster, because let's face it, everybody, it's aging, and it's aging fast. We're starting to have here a lot of guys such as Sidney Crosby, who surprisingly is turning 34, or actually had just turned 33, if you will. Evgeny Malkin actually just turned 34. That's who I was thinking of. And they're not getting any younger. And if you look at, they are definitely one of the older teams here in the NHL. Chris Letang is 33 years old. Chad Ruhwedel is 30. Brian Dumoulin is a year shy of 30 as well. So they kind of have to make those moves, and such as Tristan Jarry to try and free up some sort of cap space was, I believe, the right move. But unfortunately, they still only have about $2.5 million in cap space, guys. But again, that also has to do with the retained salary and also the buyout of Jack Johnson, which we'll get to shortly. Rob DeLuca, your thought on our Metropolitan Division rival and whether JR made the right move.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think he did. Because if there's one thing we can point to, let's look at the Matt Murray extension now that he just got in Ottawa after being traded there. He was given very long term, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure this is a 6-year deal, if I'm not mistaken.
4 years?
4-year deal. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, 4-year deal for $25 million total. That is a lot of money for Matt, for someone who clearly is possibly already on the decline, because he lost his job.
That's a bold statement,
Jarry, during the season. I mean, look, this is the same man who beat out Marc-Andre Fleury for the job and now has been beaten out by Tristan Jarry. I think they definitely made the right move. Look, the Penguins are definitely running out of time, so they want to try to somehow get one more before they lose this roster that has given them so much success over the last, say, decade plus. So almost decade and a half.
Yeah.
So this is just something that the window is finally closing. And I say finally as a Devils fan, obviously. I mean, it's unfortunate for a lot of Penguins fans and anyone else, but it's just the way hockey goes. You got to make calls as leadership, and sometimes you got to make a tough call, and this call was definitely tough, but I think in the end it'll end up being the right one, because also Casey DeSmith, as Ian name dropped earlier, a very, very capable backup. So it was very clear that it was going to be either Murray or Jarry, and they ended up going with Jarry. And hey, it's not like Matt Murray's getting stiffed over here. He's making just over $6 million a year here. So he's definitely not suffering in any way, shape, or form. He got paid the big money on an Ottawa team that is very youthful, and I think he could be an effective leader for his seasoned experience, and this Ottawa team within the next 2 to 3 years could be very exciting.
Well,
I'm sorry, Joey. Can I just jump in for 1 second? And to that point, because I don't want to leave anything open here with regards to Matt Murray, because we are going to touch upon Ottawa. Is that, remember, Matt Murray's only 26 years old. So for a guy who has a cup on his resume, going to have a little bit of a change of scenery. He's going to obviously go to a team that's coming off a couple of years of struggling, but now going through that rebuilding phase is only going to aid their case. So for a team that's really been a doormat of the National Hockey League for the last couple of years, getting Ottawa acquiring Matt Murray is one of the best moves they probably could have made in a couple of years.
Yeah, but it's not only that, though. It's also the fact that they are still $8 million under the cap, under the salary floor. So that's also an issue because clearly Pierre Dorion is taking his time and trying to make sure that he gets the right pieces and at the right price as well to go along with the guys such as the Colin Whites, the Nikita Zaitsevs, the Brady Kachucks of the world. And again, we'll see. Obviously, there's a lot of restricted free agents that they have, such as, again, Chris Tierney, who I think, again, and I hate to keep going back to him, but one of the better third-line forwards in the entire NHL, and he's really a two-way forward as well, something that San Jose has been missing for a long time on another show. And also, don't forget, too, they replaced Ron Hainsey with a bulky defenseman such as Eric Goodbranson, who has a lot of experience both in Anaheim, in Pittsburgh, and also in Florida as well. So there's a lot of good things to talk about with Florida, and I personally believe that this this Ottawa team can really, really do I think great in the next 3 years. But again, they have to get some filler pieces in, similar to what Detroit did with Bobby Ryan today. They need to get some more pieces, such as those 1-year deal guys on those prove-it deals where they would be used as trade bait whenever the trade deadline is next year. I was going to say February 28th or so, but unfortunately, if the league starts January 1st, I think we're going to probably see around April or a May trade deadline. So again, we speak about that, and there's almost $9 million for Ottawa right now in essentially dead money. Marian Gaborik is on the long-term injured reserve. Bobby Ryan was bought out. Dion Phaneuf was also bought out as well. This team, there is a lot of positives again, and they also drafted a player such as Tim Stützle. And he is going to be, in my opinion, really, really, really good from what we've seen. And not only that, too, they also had the 5th pick. They also had the 28th pick as well. So this team, and also just by looking next year, too, they also have 3 second-rounders, including their own. And they could potentially have more picks in the beginning of next year's draft, if they want to take on those really large contracts as well, because clearly they can. They also, again, as we just mentioned, they need to get to the cap floor. So there were rumors that I think Ian or Rob might have put into our group message about Thomas Hickey and Johnny Boychuk potentially heading off from the New York Islanders because they are in such a horrid cap crunch right now. Detroit did that for the New York Rangers. Ian and Patrick McCormick know that. We'll get to PMAC in just a few moments. But Ottawa is in a good place, and I think with Matt Murray signing there, he could potentially restart his career after having 1.5, if not 2 years of lackadaisical play that really brought him down, and he lost his starting job, and he was one of the youngest goaltenders and probably one of the only goaltenders ever to really come off of to win 2 consecutive Stanley Cups in, I think, his first 2 years in the National Hockey League. Really, really cool stuff, and he did it against San Jose and also against the Nashville Predators. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is now time to bring in our first guest of the hour is going to be Patrick McCormick, ladies and gentlemen. And I think right now, PMAC, you're first off, welcome, number one. And Happy New Year, because it is New Year for hockey. I see you have your Yankee shirt on. We'll get to that later on. Trying to stay on topic here. But your thoughts on Henrik heading down south to Washington? And it looks like, PMAC, we cannot hear you just yet. We'll get there in just a second. But that's really something that I know for a fact with Patrick. He's definitely a little sad about seeing these guys go. And Mark Stahl, Derek Brassard, he did tell me something about trying to catch all the guys up together in Washington and try and make a makeshift Rangers South. PMAC, we still cannot hear you, buddy. What's going on here? Uh-oh. Let's see. Could we remove you and bring you back in? Hello, can we hear you? No, we cannot hear you still. Am I the only one that can't hear PMAC?
No, I got
no, I can't hear him either.
All right, that is not good. So we'll wait for PMAC to get settled here, and once we get that, I think we can keep on moving forward, and we'll get back to PMAC in just a few minutes. So right now, guys, let's talk about. I want to hear your ideas or thoughts on Henrik Lundqvist heading down to Washington. The inevitable was bound to happen. But your thoughts, Ian, for you first as a Rangers fan.
Sure. I mean, I think we hashed out a lot of the details of, the Hall of Fame career that is to be for Henrik Lundqvist in the future. Obviously, he'll have a spot in Toronto down the road when that day comes, that after he retires and is eventually inducted. So, our show last week kind of highlighted everything about his story with the Rangers, so to speak. Look, he got a 1-year deal at $1.5 million. He's going to a team like the Washington Capitals that he's familiar with. He's played against his entire career. Most of the players on the Capitals to this day were probably on the Capitals or maybe only a couple of years behind from when Henrik Lundqvist first started with the New York Rangers. So there's obviously strong familiarity with guys like Evgeny Kuznetsov, Lars Eller, Nicholas Backstrom, obviously Ovechkin being the biggest highlight of them all. And then you have another veteran coach behind the bench in Peter Laviolette. So Henrik's going there. He's trying to win one last one. I think this is it for him. I mean, unless he ends up stealing the starting job from Ilya Samsonov, which is certainly a possibility. I mean, look, he's 38 years old. I don't think he's a true competitor, and I'm sure when we get to PMAC, he can attest to that. He's been around the block. We know that. He's a Vezina winner, so he's not coming in just to be a backup. He's going to come in. He's going to try to win that starting job. Samsonov is clearly the incumbent goaltender, the goaltender that's going to start off. But I think Henrik's going to be there for more than just 25 starts, but we'll see what happens.
PMAC, your thoughts, and let's try this again.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we got you loud and clear.
Perfect. So, technology's a beautiful thing. So,
oh, yes.
As I said in my first, which nobody heard, Joe, thanks for having me on. Ian and Rob, pleasure to be on with you. And we're talking about Henrik Lundqvist, and it's going to be very interesting. The first thing that's interesting is him wearing number 35 because Samsonov is wearing 30. But it'll be very interesting to see him compete, and I think it really helps the Capitals. It's going to be weird watching the Rangers and Capitals play with Henrik Lundqvist in the building because so many times during Lundqvist's prime, the Rangers and the Capitals did battle it out for a playoff series. And it will be very, very interesting to see that. It's what shifted. Both teams are in two different aspects of their process. The Capitals may have a very slim window still to win with Ovechkin getting older, but still very effective. And the Rangers in a rebuild and a couple of years off to competing for getting deep in the playoffs and hopefully a Stanley Cup. But Lundqvist will make Samsonov better. He will definitely push him because there's one thing watching Henrik Lundqvist play or practice and play every day for a couple of years in college is he plays every game, whether it be practice or the game, to win and to be the best he possibly can. I mean, I remember watching him in practice, in training camp, going up against guys, and someone would score on him and he'd just be very upset. The player would be laughing and he would just keep on going back to business. He's a win-all kind of guy. It's nice that he gets to keep his family in New York. He's in D.C. Hopefully the Capitals can get another cup for him, and we'll see what happens.
And that's clearly what PMAC, what you're pulling for is the Caps to win a cup. And I
think any Rangers fan, Joey, will tell you, and I really despise, and Patrick can chip in his 2 cents here too. I think any Ranger fan that says that because he went to a division rival, and even if he went to the Islanders or the Devils, it did not matter to me. This guy gave 15 years of his life to making the Rangers a better franchise. He's the franchise goaltender. I mean, listen, I don't want to put him in the same conversation as Tom Seaver for the Mets, but yeah, he belongs in that same conversation. So if he ends up leading the Capitals to the promised land, I'll be the first one there to recognize him and applaud him for it. I think any Ranger fan that tells you otherwise is, and I said this last week, is just kidding themselves.
It's really understanding where the Rangers are in their rebuild. Unfortunately, the time has come for Henrik to move on, and it's nothing Henrik did wrong. Henrik didn't say, I'm leaving the Rangers to go to Washington, or I will be leaving to go to the Islanders or the Devils, which may be tougher to root for, but you still root for a first-class guy like that. But the Rangers bought him out. His time at the Rangers expired, so it's very easy to root for a guy like that, knowing where the Rangers are as a franchise right now and knowing what he wants to accomplish and what he hopefully will be able to accomplish at his stages of career. So he's done so much as in top winning goalie as a European, Rangers top winning goalie, which is really a great accomplishment and showed where he was in his prime. So you watch some of the highlights, like that one save in Game 6 against the Canadians was unbelievable. One of those you could really watch, and just watching those 2 to 5 minute clips, which I may have watched 100 times, not exaggerating, at work when he was bought out, is really showed how special he was. I mean, people can argue on the other side, and I may digress a little bit, but goalie stats were different. But what he accomplished was unbelievable, and you hope him nothing but the best because he was a competitor. He was a great person for community and a great guy overall.
Yeah, and you bring up that that big save 2014. That was Thomas Vanek. That was a humongous save, and probably one of the greatest saves that we'll ever see. And especially coming from Henrik Lundqvist is probably really cool. And I know it's definitely hard for Rangers fans. I know, again, it's a little different coming from an Islanders fan, and it's very. And you know what? I think some people, Ian and Pat, if he were to go to the New York Islanders or the New Jersey Devils, how difficult would it be to root for him? I mean, come on, that is something.
It would be difficult, but listen.
You can say a Rangers fan is kidding himself. I
understand what you're getting at, but like Patrick said it best, his time with the Rangers was up. Yes, it would have been difficult to accept it initially. I mean, I don't think like Ranger fans could look at a move of him maybe going to the Devils or the Islanders and saying that's like when Brian Trottier came and coached the Rangers. I mean, yeah, maybe to a certain degree, maybe certain fans would look at it similarly, but look at the career that he had there. I know as one fan, and I can't speak for PMAC, I just wouldn't be as upset about it just because of everything he gave that franchise.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, Joe.
Please, Pat, go ahead.
The nice part about that is there was that closure when he was bought out, knowing he probably wasn't going to be an Islander or a Devil just because the Islanders just signed Sorokin and have Varlamov coming off a very good playoff series. And then just for the Devils, I'm not really sure where the Devils are as a franchise right now. They're kind of in that rebuild spot where I don't think Lundqvist would sign with a rebuilding team. So just knowing those two options weren't in play was very nice. And I mean, the Capitals, if like say we just finished 2015-16 when the Rangers were playing the Capitals every year and he just signed with the Capitals, it would be tough to root for him because they're going neck and neck. But again, like I mentioned, they're in two different stages of where the organization is.
Sure.
So it makes it so much easier to be at peace with where he is and just watch him succeed and have a good year.
There's a lot of moving parts, and especially with today being free agent frenzy, there is, again, you brought up the point of him not wanting to go to a rebuilding team. We look at a guy like Bobby Ryan as well, who actually went to Detroit. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but some people choose their destiny a little differently, where they could be used as a trade chip one of these days and eventually get to a contender that, if you roll the dice, you could potentially get to a Stanley Cup winning team and eventually lift up that first cup. Who knows what's going to happen with Henrik and the Capitals? Guys, the Caps also signed Justin Schultz as well. They still have Jonas Siegenthaler to re-sign. They only have about $500,000 in cap space. Let's keep it moving forward here. And I want to talk about the current New York Rangers status and what we saw today. Guys, we saw Jack Johnson be a signing today. We also saw Keith Kincaid, as we said at the top of the show. He was signed most likely for a spot in Hartford. He'll probably be the starting goaltender at the AHL level. But the moral of that story is that he's coming home. He's a Farmingville product here, just a few miles east of us. On Long Island. So we're going to start off with Ian here, and then we'll get to PMAC and then DeLuca and then myself. I want to know what you think about the New York Rangers trading away Mark Stahl and then bringing in potentially what was one of the worst signings that Jim Rutherford had in Pittsburgh. And John Davidson actually has a lot of familiarity with the aforementioned Johnson from his days in Columbus.
Yeah, I mean, remember when I believe it was when JD was the president of hockey operations with the Blue Jackets, and he was the piece that summoned Jack Johnson, I should say, or signed Jack Johnson in Columbus. Look, when you look at the stats, certainly Jack Johnson is a much more inferior defensive player than Mark Stahl is. Listen, Mark Stahl was never the same player after he caught that puck in his eye. We certainly saw it year upon year. We certainly hope that wasn't going to be the end game for Mark Stahl, and he's since gone on to Detroit. Look, if you want to start off talking about what they're going to look like defensively, I mean, I still have question marks regarding Tony DeAngelo, but there have been a lot of prospects waiting in the wings for this team. Keandre Miller, Libor Hajek, who saw what, about 25 games last year, and that's Niels Lundqvist, their draft pick 2 years ago. So they have guys that are waiting to play at this point. And like PMAC said, the Rangers right now are still in the thick of a rebuild. They're still a couple of years away from going deep in the playoffs. You have to like the way they look offensively. I mean, Zibanejad, Kakko, Panarin now having the top pick in Lafreniere. So you have to like where this team is headed offensively. You have to like with what you're seeing out of Shesterkin in goal. There's certainly question marks on the defensive side. Hopefully the offense can kind of make up for that. In regards to who they've acquired today besides Johnson, yeah, these are just moves that are just going to help boost their depth in Hartford. Guys like Kincaid, Rooney, Potato, guys like that are just going to end up playing for the Wolfpack, and potentially guys that they can really use towards when we talk about next season and we start talking about the expansion draft for Seattle.
Yeah, that's a big deal, and something along with Ian's point is that it's very, very, very uncertain. In addition to the pandemic and also with monies not being there, is that we also have to realize that next year, right before the 2021 NHL draft, there will be a second expansion draft in nearly 4 years. So this is something big, and probably a big reason why today we've only seen a handful of more than 2-year deals handed out to a lot of these players. And again, Jack Johnson being the number one guy, or the highest signing, if you will, or the highest profile signing, if you will, for the aforementioned Rangers. It is a prove-it deal. It is most likely a deal that they could probably ship him off to a contender, or again, maybe just for the locker room. As Ian said, there's so many.
1 year, $1.5 million.
That's it. And it is a very movable contract. And I want to know what PMAC has to say about Jack Johnson, who, mind you, everybody, for those that do not remember, Jack Johnson was acquired from the Los Angeles Kings when Jeff Carter was sent from Columbus to Los Angeles. He was that key piece. PMAC, your thoughts on Jack Johnson and the rest of the day number 1 for the New York Rangers.
I'm not going to overlook, Jack Johnson 1 year, it is what it is, and there's a lot of things going on there. I trust John Davidson where he knew him in Columbus, and I hope that maybe if you look around the Ranger room, they're very young. Maybe veteran presence helps. And then also what you mentioned, the same thing with Bobby Ryan, where he gets off to a good start. You could swap him for picks. Can't go wrong with enough picks. But the Rangers' defensive situation is Lundqvist going to play this year? Is Miller going to be ready this year? They need some pieces. Is DeAngelo even going to be on this team when camp opens? You like to hope so, but if the Rangers get a deal for Tony DeAngelo, they may deal him if he wants too much money because he's a RFA. You just look at the defensive situation. There's a lot of things that could change. And Jack Johnson, again, he's a top 5 pick. So even if he's the 7th defenseman, if he's not playing well, hopefully he can mentor some Kakko or Lafreniere and show him what's like being a top 5 pick, how it is to handle yourself in the NHL. And JD liked him. So if JD liked him, maybe it's helping some of the younger defensemen. Maybe it's helping DeAngelo grow. Maybe it's helping Keandre Miller grow. I mean, you look at Jacob Trouba, he's the most veteran defenseman on that team, or Brendan Smith, but Trouba's only 26, and who knows what's going to happen with Brendan Smith. So I think it's more of a locker room guy, some veteran presence, and if he plays well, it's an added bonus. If he doesn't work out, it's only one year, and you have to realize, I don't think the Rangers are going to win the Stanley Cup this year. Even if they get a couple playoff games, it's an added bonus, but it's something hopefully you can help the guys grow. It's good you can train for picks. They're not in the situation to win now, so I'm not looking too much into it. I just hope it works out for the best, and if he's not the best player on the ice, hopefully he can help the team grow. Everyone else, Hartford looks good. I mean, I really like Kevin Rooney watching Devil games. He's that fourth-line energy guy, center, so hopefully we'll see what happens there. Keith Kincaid, a goalie they could expose for being claimed in the entry draft that they had to. So it wasn't a bad day, wasn't an overly exciting day, but I just can't wait till the Rangers play hockey again and see what they could produce on the ice.
So, Rob DeLuca, because we spoke about this earlier about Jack Johnson and how we are not Rangers fans, and I know Ian was all a part of this, where we were kind of laughing at the signing. But now, as the two Rangers fans discuss it a little bit more, it kind of sounds logical. But do we laugh at this signing, or do we laugh at Kevin Rooney because you know all about the aforementioned Rooney? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Kevin Rooney's not an NHL player. If the Rangers signed him, obviously the biased Devils fan in me is laughing. The non-biased analyst in me sees this as a good signing for Hartford. If that's what they use him for, this is good. This is a very effective signing. He can bring some energy. I felt he lacked that in New Jersey for whatever reason. He just was not what he was in the minors. Energy-wise, it seemed like he took a step back. So, look, I'm not a big fan, but look, he was cheap. Plus, I'm pretty sure you need to have a minimum number of players you can expose to Seattle. He will obviously be one of them in the second year. So, I think that the move of Kevin Rooney is – I mean, it also could have been half spite because it was no secret to him. Fans did not like him. But to go across the river, I think he'll be very useful in Hartford. I really don't think the Rangers should try to push him up and use him on the fourth line. He is not a good replacement, in my opinion, for a guy like Greg McKegg. I think Greg McKegg provides such a better energy and actually is a little more useful on the offensive side of the puck as well. So I would stick to him and not bring up Rooney unless you absolutely have to due to injury. But for the rest of their day, it's a little bit of a head scratcher. Keith Kincaid, obviously starting in Hartford. And then obviously he'd come up if there's an injury to Georgiev or Shesterkin, which God forbid, I guarantee you all, Rangers fans do not want to see that because, again, he isn't good at hockey. There's no, I cannot sugarcoat this. There's a reason he's been bounced around from New Jersey to Montreal to the AHL to then being traded in the AHL, which is a bad sign about yourself if you're getting traded while you're in the minors. So that's never a good look. But yeah, and then look, Jack Johnson. Look, yeah, as Pat and Ian mentioned, the Rangers are not in a win now spot. So in a way, Jack Johnson could be beneficial. But with how many question marks there are to the New York Rangers defense, in my personal opinion, this does not help them whatsoever. Even though it's only just 1 year, this does not give them any sort of boost because, like you said, Joey, he really was statistically one of, if not the worst defenseman in the league last year. So it's a tough call.
Yeah, and you know what the crazy part is that remember a couple of years ago we were talking about how bad Brendan Smith was at defense. And then he was moved up to forward. He was moved up to the fourth line, and then he was decent. And then they're like, all right, well, let's try him back in defense. And then now all of a sudden he's now playing the left side again. So and the way it looks, again, I think there was a graphic where it was just it simply was not good for him, and really for all of the Rangers to have both Brendan Smith, also Mark Stahl on that same team. And now again, it's exactly what PMAC said, is that they're not expected to win now. There is no expectation there yet. They're also going to have Lafreniere in there. And now the biggest thing, guys, that I want to go through is that how about any team needs, any additional team needs with $12 million in cap space? Do we see any more signings, even though what we actually did see, what Ian actually had told me a little bit about, was that they were kicking tires on Matt Martin. There was some talk about Matty coming out from Long Island, heading into Manhattan. But, as Ian said, they needed some fourth liners, but would Matt Martin solve that puzzle? I don't know, because his running mates aren't coming along with him.
No, you're right, but I think what he does is he adds a physical presence. He's a guy on the fourth line that can actually score, which is something that the Rangers' fourth line probably hasn't seen in some time now, probably since the days of Dominic Moore. Listen, Rob's right. I mean, Greg McKegg does give you a nice option, but guys like Phil DiGiuseppe, I mean, year after year, we continue to see the Rangers run guys from Hartford out on their fourth line, trying to piece together parts in the hopes to put together a line that might be productive. And every year we see the time on the ice for the fourth line consistently and continually go down. Now, granted, on most teams, that's how it works for the fourth line. But for a team, as an example, and I was on Twitter talking about this, is you saw how good the Islanders got. Now, granted, the Rangers wouldn't be getting Cal Clutterbuck or Devon Toews or anybody like that coming down there with him, okay? However, I think in the Rangers' case, I think a guy like Martin would give them some veteran presence. He'd be playing on the line with Lafreniere, because I think that's where Lafreniere is going to start, is on the fourth line, so they would need someone to center the fourth line. Possibly we could be talking about that being Ryan Strome, but I don't think he'll be a fourth-line center if he came back. But I think it just gives them it helps to build out that fourth line. Look at how far the Islanders got. There's something to be said, and this is what it's all coming up to for me. There's something to be said about being able to roll four lines deep. And that was something the Islanders were great at this year. It's what kept them 2 wins away from reaching the Stanley Cup final. And I think this is something that the Rangers have to do, and this is something the Rangers have to address.
Fellas, actually, right before we get to PMAC, there is some breaking news here that we want to break here on the Primetime Rundown NHL special. TJ Brodie to Toronto. TJ Brodie to Toronto. That is a big deal for Toronto Maple Leafs fans. I want to analyze this signing here, guys. I'm going to start this off. It's a decent signing. He's a left-handed shot. He plays on the right side. This is a big deal for Toronto. Does it solve all of their problems? Not even close. This is a good start. Don't know the term yet. We can thank Elliot Friedman for that one. Rob, Ian, PMAC, I don't know if you have any thoughts on TJ, but guys, my guys, Rob and Ian, let's just detour quickly with TJ Brodie going to Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, look, this signing is interesting because just based on quick Twitter check on the reaction to Elliot Friedman from Toronto Maple Leafs fans. Granted, I mean, this is hard to justify because we all know how reasonable Toronto Maple Leafs fans are. They're very reasonable people. They do not seem thrilled about this, mainly, especially because of him being a left-handed defenseman. Apparently, I guess they're not in need for this, but it's not like TJ Brodie's exactly a bad player, because here's the thing: they don't like that he's a left-handed shooter, but plays on the right side. So I don't know why that freaks him out, but nonetheless, this isn't something that's going to solve their problems in any way, shape, or form. I am very curious to what the terms will be when they get released, because on what planet does Toronto have any money whatsoever right now to sign anybody, let alone a respectable name like TJ Brodie? I really am curious to see what this will be broken down to, but nonetheless, this obviously tells me, regardless of what the numbers end up being, because I doubt it's unless it's league minimum, you're going to see moves coming out of Toronto soon.
I think what it comes down to for the Leafs, we had this discussion between the three of us the other day, is that there are so many questions regarding the Maple Leafs on the blue line. And what I was hearing on NHL Network today is that they're floating Tyson Barrie's name around for trades. So, I mean, there's even talk about him possibly getting traded to Vancouver. So if anything, this really could become a possibility where TJ Brodie is being signed because Barrie could be on the move tomorrow. So let's just keep that in mind.
Yeah, this is a big deal. Also, as we did say, Tyson Barrie is also a UFA, so he would just be heading there to be signed. Last year with Calgary, TJ Brodie, 4 goals, 15 assists, 19 total points in the playoffs, 10 total games this year, 1 goal, 3 points. And also 4 points, 4 total points, and total of 64 games. I think that's actually the most. I think that was he played every single game. I think.
No, I'm sorry. Barrie is an unrestricted free agent.
Yes, Tyson Barrie.
I was wrong then. I thought he had a year left. So,
yeah. Okay. But yeah, this does not solve their problems, but it is definitely a good start, and definitely something also somewhat of insurance as well, because they do have both Jake Muzzin and Morgan Rielly, who are both very injury prone. Let's actually rewind to what we were discussing. So now that news has been broken. Again, for those that are just joining us, TJ Brodie from Calgary has been signed by the Toronto Maple Leafs. PMAC, let's go back to what we were talking about with the New York Rangers and their fourth line. We heard the rumblings about Matt Martin. We heard about McKegg, etc. Let's hear your points as a Rangers fan yourself.
So Ian talking about the fourth line and the ice time decreasing actually brought me up to last year when you play the Rangers fourth line. This is what I don't want to happen with Jack Johnson. If Johnson struggles to the first 10, 15 games, I don't want them shoving him out there just to play. Ian probably remembered this well. I remember it was a simple math equation. 14 plus 28 equals 42. Or you throw a 38 in there. You have DJ Deppe centering Elias Anderson, and either have Michael Haley and Brendan Smith on that wing. And it just isn't what the team needs right now for shoving 3 guys out there just to play. If that's the case, I would like to see what some of the young guys had. I mean, you don't want to play young guys on the fourth line, but if you're going to play Brendan Smith, Michael Haley, and all those guys, veterans who don't have a future with this team, I would rather see the young guys play 7 to 8 minutes a night and just get that NHL experience. So if Johnson's going to fail, I don't want him taking ice time from either a Lundqvist or Miller. And they say Lundqvist is a year off, but either a Miller or any other defensive prospect they may have, a Labor Hyatt. Going back to the fourth line, and I haven't heard a lot about him today, and he's not as important as Henrik Lundqvist. He's not as important as Mark Stahl, but he's another guy who's an important part of the Rangers organization, their success. He's a guy no one really talks about, but he's a guy who can play line 1 through 4. And Ian, can I ask you, would you rather have a Matt Martin, or I don't know, I don't think it's going to happen, but would you try to throw a couple years at Jesper Fast?
I think they actually have the money to do both. Look, I think they spent, and I appreciate you, Patrick, for bringing that up, because Fast is so important to this team. He was a third-line player last year. He could really play, like Pat said, really on any line. He's that effective, and he's a great penalty killer, something that the Rangers were missing terribly come postseason time. So I think at this point, maybe with the $12 million that they do have available, they could sign. You could couple maybe a Fast at 2-3 AAV along with maybe a Matt Martin at that same price. It depends how much Matt Martin wants. I would definitely take Fast over Martin, and especially if you could plant Fast on the fourth line. I don't know if that's what would happen, but I would love to see both. If not, I would definitely take Fast first for sure. And
that's just something I hope the Rangers can re-sign. He, again, brings that leadership, and he's not a very vocal guy, but he does everything you're supposed to do. He's won the Rangers Players Award 4 to 5 years in a row, which is voting on the players the most, most team-like guy in the locker room. But you saw it with Fast in the quick series against Carolina. The Rangers' penalty kill struggled because Jesper Fast got hurt in game 1. And he's just one of those quiet guys who gets everything done, who is someone you talk about Rangers needs. I think the Rangers need him to help this team grow. And if you talk about last year, he's my favorite player on the team, but they talk about Captain Mika. I would love to see Jesper Fast become captain, but that's just something that's me being biased and something that probably won't become true, but that's just how highly I think of Jesper Fast's play.
I think it's got to be, to answer your question about who might wear the C for the Rangers next year, I think a lot of ways is leaning just on experience towards giving it to Kreider. But we'll see what happens. I would have no problem giving it to 93.
You have to realize something, guys. Again, this is our free agent frenzy show. This is something that I kind of want to go off script here. And I want to ask you, the two of you guys, this, because this is something that is big time. When the New York Rangers have Artemi Panarin for the next 6 years at $11,642,857 to the T, average annual value. But then let's not forget, PMAC was just talking about someone named Mika Zibanejad, who, let's be honest here, is getting paid right now a very friendly $5.35 million AAV. And I know for a fact, Ian and I have discussed this before. And again, we don't know what's going to happen with Lafreniere. Again, that's in 4 years. So who knows about payday? We don't know about the flat cap. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. But there's going to be some questions if there is a flat cap about certain payments. Can they afford Jesper Fast right now for a prolonged term? Do we know how long they could go on for? Again, the biggest thing with the Rangers is that they were able to get out of Lundqvist's deal this year. Have about $5.5 million in dead money. Shattenkirk, they have about $13 million in dead money. They lose about 8 of that next year. So where does the money come from, guys? Where does the money come from?
Well, I think if I looked at the figures, I think with Lundqvist, most of that dead money coming off this year, Brendan Smith coming off, Mark Stahl got traded, so he's off completely.
He's off.
Yeah, Brendan Smith, Dan Girardi. I think they have somewhere, minus the contracts that they would have to pay out, I think they have somewhere in lines next year of like $44 million in space, depending on where the cap hits in terms of, if they register the cap at a certain level and they leave it flat. But I think they have about $44 million in cap space. So I think if you sign Foss to a $3-4 million AAV, and let's say they go out and they get a Martin at the same price, I think you're still working with a ballpark of about $35 million next year. And even if you subtract 10 of that for, they say whatever your cap space is at the end of the year, you're supposed to subtract $10 million from it. I still think that they'd be able to lock those guys up with $25 million.
Yeah. All right, Joey, I was doing some digging while you guys were discussing, trying to be insiders like the professionals we see on the television sets, but
and one that we're actually going to have in about a half hour.
Exactly, precisely. Now, here is where it gets a little tricky for the Leafs, and I really wonder where this money is coming from. We are looking at a 4-year contract of $5 million AAV. So I do not know where they managed to find $20 million to
is there a breakdown though, Rob? Is that money backloaded? Because
I'm trying to find a contract structure, but this is a little nuts. I mean,
so just before we actually head over back to the New Jersey Devils, to go with Rob's point, we were talking about TJ Brodie just a few moments ago, and again, he's 30 years old. And potentially 4 years, again, most likely will be protected in next year's draft, in next year's expansion draft, which again is big. We also do not know if there is a no movement clause. Okay, so Elliot Friedman just 17 seconds ago, 4 times 5 is 20. So it's a 4-year deal worth $20 million, $5 million AAV. We don't know the exact terminology in terms of is there any no trade, no movement, limited, anything along those lines. And something else, guys, also, this is big stuff as well, that there is $8.5 million or $8.1 million that every team can be over on free agent day, on any day, because just a few days before puck drop is when they have to be under the cap. But until then, they have $8.5 million to play with for those, such as, again, like the Vegas Golden Knights, the Toronto Maple Leafs. They can be over They do not have to be under on a day like today. Let's get back to what we were talking about because we're going all over the place here. And I want to stick to our teams here in the tri-state area. Want to go to Rob DeLuca because he's a diehard New Jersey Devils fan. And the Devils, they're a little all over the place. So I want to know, Rob, about the team needs. I know your answer is going to be everything, but let's dive in a little bit more to what they could do.
I mean, yeah, look, the reality of the situation is they could use just about everything but the kitchen sink. But nonetheless, the fact that the New Jersey Devils have, in fact, bought out goaltender Corey Schneider, this isn't the end of yet another but short era. This was Martin Berdore's successor, and he, for years, the prime years of his career, he was keeping us in games when we were not even remotely competitive. He's the only reason we were not finishing bottom 3 in the league every single year for the past 7 years, as opposed to just the last couple. But honestly, there's just not enough words I can say to describe how thankful I am for Corey Schneider. I've been losing a lot of people to retirement on my sports teams. Just a little side note there. It hasn't been fair to me. But nonetheless, it's very sad to see him go. But that doesn't put us in the goaltender market for a veteran backup to mentor Mackenzie Blackwood. That is his net now. And
it's a scary thought.
Yeah, no, it's
scary thought.
You know what? There's nothing I saw last season that says he doesn't deserve the shot. But that's also why you go get a veteran, because God forbid something goes wrong, you've got someone capable, ready to go in a 1B situation, because that's just the way teams seem to do things now. It's more of a 50-30 split as opposed to the traditional old way 60-20. So I think that some names out there, there's a couple of obvious ones. I mean, granted, the goaltending market has thinned out today, but there's not a lot of ways the Devils can go wrong here. You look at a guy like Thomas Greiss. Thomas Greiss, fantastic goaltender. According to Incarcerated Bob on Twitter, he has pegged it could be between New Jersey and Edmonton, two very polar opposite teams. But nonetheless, when he hears something, sometimes smoke follows. You never know. So I would love to see Thomas Greiss in a Devils uniform. I believe it also be very convenient for him, because obviously with him living on the island, being with the Islanders all these years, plus a recently newborn child, there's not too much of an inconvenience just coming to New Jersey as opposed to the island. That's like an hour difference. It's really not that bad at all. And so, yeah, there's Thomas Greiss. There's also Corey Crawford, who the Chicago Blackhawks announced they will not be retaining. So he is out there. He is an option. And, of course, via trade, Vegas Golden Knights goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury is 100% up for grabs, especially because the Devils are so far under the cap floor that a contract like Fleury's could help them get there. But, however, because of the severity of his contract, I believe the value that GM Tom Fitzgerald is asking for is rather high, and it is up to Vegas to determine whether they are desperate enough to give in to whatever sweetener the New Jersey Devils are asking for.
It's so tough because, again, you look at the New Jersey Devils, and just to go back to what you were talking about with Thomas Greiss, because regardless of him either in New Jersey or Edmonton, especially because of his wife, Brittany, great woman, by the way, great family, again, both really good family people, just great people in general. They live out here on Long Island, and really, let's not forget, there's plenty of human beings that travel from I don't know, let's call it, for instance, Long Island to Brooklyn. PMAC knows that I do that all the time. So why can't you just go from Long Island to New Jersey? And really, you could still raise your family on Long Island. You don't have to move to New Jersey. You could stay right here, which I think is probably one of his best bets. But Edmonton, I don't know. I don't think that would be a great landing spot because of everything that's been going on in Edmonton. The turmoil there, where there was a couple of splashes where there could have been a potential. Someone was calling for Connor McDavid. I don't know why or where that came from. That was from a couple of blue check marks on Twitter. But the New Jersey Devils, they're not close. And not only that, Rob, just just to say, you were saying that they're so far under the cap. They're only $5 million under the cap, so they're not that far. But and again, they still have a couple of RFAs to sign too. You still got Jesper Bratt, Mackenzie Blackwood being the two.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not that far, but just, being a New Jersey Devils fan the last few years and how stingy these owners are on spending money. Because, look, they're very stingy on spending money. I'm not a fan of them. And so $5 million feels like an eternity for these guys to get in here. But, yeah, also, the wing depth for the Devils can always be addressed. I feel defense is going to be something else to watch out for as you watch this trade for Ryan Murray. But I don't think we're done yet. It'll be very interesting to see. On Sportsnet today, actually, Mike Futa, who was a potential general manager candidate for us, according to him. So I don't know how much water that actually had. But he said that apparently the Devils are primed to try and use an offer sheet on somebody. He didn't say who, but apparently the word offer sheet was used in his little rant about the Devils. So don't expect this to be a quiet offseason. Do not expect this to be a quiet offseason for New Jersey.
That's bold, especially with an offer sheet, because again, with in this flat cap era, that really, 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 really is so tough. Again, with not a lot of money from places. Period. We don't know the severity of what people's or franchises' finances are. We don't know what the deal is, and I think I think a lot of draft capital. I think a lot of people are hanging on to that because that's all that some teams could afford right now. We don't know again what the deal is in Ottawa. We don't know what the deal is in Sunrise, and those two teams, especially those two, and even in Arizona as well. Even though that the aforementioned Coyotes not usually, but lately have spent to the cap. We don't know about their finances right now in this flat cap era. Ian Schraier, Patrick McCormick, in that order. Ian, let's conclude New Jersey's segment and see what their evaluation is to you.
I think Marc-Andre Fleury seems more reasonable at this point than Thomas Greiss. This morning, Fleury's name, there was a lot of smoke to Marc-Andre Fleury. Nothing definite yet, but there was a lot more smoke to Fleury's name than Greiss's. And I know we're going to get to the Islanders in a second, but on top of that, Andrew Gross from Newsday this afternoon reporting that Semyon Varlamov might be on the move and that Thomas Greiss might stay on Long Island as Ilya Sorokin's backup, or whether Sorokin's going to start the backup or whatnot. So that begs the question, does Varlamov become trade bait somewhere now? So I think there's definitely a lot more smoke to the ideas of Fleury coming to New Jersey because A, the Devils can afford him, and B, there's really no question marks with respect to the goaltending situation right now with the Islanders.
PMAC, your thoughts on the New Jersey Devils?
From this offseason to last offseason, I think the Devils' goals dramatically changed. You saw our last offseason, they went from having Taylor Hall, Nico Hischier, and the ability to draft Jack Hughes to trading Taylor Hall, but also backtrack, getting PK Subban in the deal, ready to make a push and maybe make the playoffs off the 2017-18 year. This year, they traded Hall, and they were still a bottom feeder in NHL, and it's what direction is Fitzgerald and the team going in? Because there are so many question marks when it comes to the Devils and how could it get better. They are young, but there are also guys and Rob, you could correct me if you think I'm wrong. There are guys in this Devils system, regarding with Pavel Zacha and Damon Severson, who just haven't really quite lived up to expectations during said rebuild. So there are so many pieces I feel like the Devils need, and I feel for the Tri-State, it's good for the Tri-State if the Rangers, Devils, and Islanders are in good shape. And going into 17-18 with the Rangers coming off their playoff run and rebuilding, the Islanders continue getting better every year. I thought the Devils could have run with Hall in the Subban trade and have a really good year last year. But this year, I'm really not sure to look at the Devils. They just need so much, and they have so much missing.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Pat. I mean, look, I could not be more disappointed with Pavel Zacha's performance, just not living up to the expectations of a 6th overall pick at all at any point of his career. And it's just a damn shame because, look, the Devils have been trying to work with him so many times, but at some point you gotta let go. And at this point, you very well could hear his name if he doesn't produce come the trade deadline, whenever that may be this upcoming season, considering we don't even know when we're going to start. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. Damon Severson still has value. So if we feel he's not the answer for us, we can easily move him come deadline time, because a lot of teams value Damon Severson as a solid defender. He certainly isn't providing the offensive spark that we were expecting, but you never know. With crazy years like the ones we had this year, anything could change whenever we start up again. But yeah, Pat, you definitely are not wrong in any sense right now.
Well,
just one more question. Sorry. Do you feel like their motive switched from last year to this year, where you get Subban and hopefully to build off the magic of that 2017-18 year where they kind of surprised everyone and got into the playoffs, and then trying to make that one push before the eventual said rebuild, which is they're trying for now?
I think they are in the rebuild. They getting Subban was more of a leadership move. What we did was what the Devils did when Ray Shero was GM was they picked him up because they went off of 2018. They felt that magical playoff run where they started hot and just did not completely collapse and made the playoffs as the 8th seed. It did not reflect the true performance and true skill of this team, which was unfortunate because it sent us in the wrong direction, painfully wrong direction, actually. And now with a new GM in place, it seems like Tom Fitzgerald understands where this team is at, and he is making the appropriate moves to get them back on track. And hopefully by next season, not the upcoming one, the following season, they will finally push for a playoff spot. And then in 2 to 3 years, and then in like 3 years, we're talking contending for a championship.
And I think by the end of the 2021 season, the Devils also have to figure out how to put pieces. And granted, they're still very young, but put pieces around guys like Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes and start getting these guys on the score sheet, because Hischier's was drafted 2-3 years ago, and we need to start. And I think for Devils fans and the Devils franchise as a whole, there needs to be some sort of translation to the score sheet, because we have not seen it yet.
Not only that, guys, too, also, I think the biggest trade chip right now for the New Jersey Devils, Kyle Palmieri, who also, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, there was some rumblings that there could have been a contract extension discussed with the aforementioned Palmieri, who is also from this area.
Look, Kyle Palmieri, I love to death. He especially when he's one of the only goal scorers on the team. But look, that comes with the territory when you shoot as much as he does. He's a shooter, and eventually the puck's going to go in a few times when you shoot that much. So there was talks that he was in for an extension. Seems like talks have kind of stalled a little bit, which obviously is never a great sign. But I think what we're looking at here is a potential trade. I think it's almost inevitable at this point. Obviously, me personally, I'm never a fan. If you know you're going to trade someone, do it while they have the value. Don't take a chance on playing the season and then them not performing, which takes away from their value. Look, when it's Palmieri and the Devils, the odds are he's probably not going to lose his value, but you really don't know. And why leave that up to chance? So if a trade is inevitable, I would say that's got to be kickstarted and taken care of sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the land of Newark, because there's a lot of work to be done for the New Jersey Devils. Again, they own the New York Islanders' 2nd-round draft pick next year. They own the Arizona Coyotes' 3rd-round draft pick, and they also own the Buffalo Sabres' 5th-round draft pick, and finally the 7th-round draft pick from the Arizona Coyotes, all from the Taylor Hall trade. Let's move on here to the final team in the tri-state area, guys, and this is what Ian and I were talking about. We're all talking about it for the final 15 minutes of our hour number 1 segment here. For those that are just joining us, we cannot thank you enough. Blackjack Television, channel 199 here on Zingo. Also on the Eastern Observer. Cannot thank you all enough. Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, Patrick McCormick. I'm Joey Jarzynka. Let's keep it moving forward, fellas. The New York Islanders, they're in a very, very bad spot. And regardless of what PMAC said earlier, that they're getting better, Well, guess what? I think that they're going to be taking not only a step back next year, I think it's going to be a little bit of a different sighting, if you will, in terms of the personnel that is on the ice. Again, Matthew Barzal being the superstar in the making is a restricted free agent. And let's not forget, they only have $8.905 million in cap space, and they also have to re-sign Ryan Pulock and Devon Toews as well. As we brought up earlier about Semyon Varlamov, someone that could potentially be on the move, I think that would be probably the stupidest thing and the biggest stab in the back to Semyon Varlamov. But Ian Schraier, let's get to it. Let's talk about the Islanders for a few minutes and your thoughts as an outsider.
Look, we'll obviously speak about it for our audience. Look, I don't see you don't listen. I know all the talk for the last few years that's been building up and building up and building up for Islander fans, the wait for that franchise goaltender, and all the thought is that Ilya Sorokin is finally it. I thought, at least or so it appears and still is, that Sorokin would start the 2021 season as the backup to Semyon Varlamov. Why would you not go with the Rock that got you to where you were in the playoff picture this year? You said it the best, Joey. It's a stab in the back. That's part one. Part two, I don't think that and actually, you know what? Let me jump back to the Sorokin piece. How do you know Sorokin's going to pan out? If Sorokin doesn't pan out, guess what? You've just backed yourself up even further because now you've got to dip back into that free agent pool and hope that you have another hit, that maybe third time's the charm again, that you hit with Robin Leonard, you hit with Semyon Varlamov, and hopefully if in the case Sorokin doesn't pan out, that you've reached into the free agent bag again and that you pulled out the right goaltender. If not, it's going to set the Islanders back. In regards to Barzal, no, I don't think anybody's going to offer sheet him. I don't think anyone's going to spend the 4 first-round draft picks it's going to cost to get him at this point. It looks like it's not so much a done deal, but Lou Lamoriello said the other day that it doesn't look like he's going to go anywhere, so I don't think anybody – I think we can squash the rumor of Barzal really going anywhere. But, yeah, they are in tight cap situation right now. They really can't afford to sign Barzal. And – two of your best players from last year, Ryan Pulock and Devon Toews, who were part of that whole, all those mainstays on that Islander team that went as far as they did, you've got to try to lock them up too. So I know there's been a lot of talk of, would the Islanders try to swing that big forward in like a Mike Hoffman? Well, they need to try to take care of their own first. So I don't know where they go from here, but I think it's a good thing for the Islanders that it looks like Barzal's not going anywhere, but when it comes to the goaltender situation, you got to keep Varlamov there and let Greiss hit the free agent market because I think they're doing themselves a huge disservice by now.
And not only that, guys, before we get to PMAC and Rob on this, I think with the New York Islanders, and again, for those that are watching that are Islanders fans, please leave questions for us, and we'd love to get it answered in the next few moments before we have the fourth period's Dennis Bernstein on here with us, our good friend, and our insider here on the Eastern Observer. I personally believe that there was some, or from what we did hear, that there was some kicking of the tires for Leo Komarov and Thomas Hickey heading to the Ottawa Senators, but there was not much traction there. Why? Because it looks as if that Lou Lamoriello has now backed himself into a corner. And this is something that Rob DeLuca knows very well. It usually doesn't happen that often, especially with Lou. Right now, I think that you have to try and trade Johnny Boychuk in that $6 million contract. But again, I think in this new flat cap era,
good luck, by the way.
In this new flat cap era, in the land of the expansion draft that comes in a year and a half, or rather about a year and a half, a lot of these teams are very skeptical on taking guys with more than just 1 year. And really right now, the only one that has 1 year left is Casey Cizikas, who the Islanders most likely will probably, and I think that's, I don't know if they're going to protect him, but
if I'm Lou, I do.
I mean, you might have to, and it's so difficult. You might not be able to afford your main guys, Derek Brassard. You might not be able to afford Matt Martin, who is a fourth line guy and who makes that fourth line whole. We saw just a couple of years when Matt Martin took a little excursion to Toronto, signed by the aforementioned Lou Lamoriello, by the way. was in Mike Babcock's doghouse within about 3 games, but I'll digress there. And eventually Lou traded back for him once he got back here to Long Island. So there's, again, a ton of moving parts. And really, I think the whole thing with Semyon Varlamov, I don't believe that would be the case, because then you would also have the possibility with Ilya Sorokin saying, you know what? All right, I'll just play these 2 years or whatever it may be, or it would be about a year. And that's it. And then I'm off. Even though he is a restricted free agent, he may demand a trade. He may want to trade out of here, and you don't know. So exactly what Ian said as well with Varlamov. He was one of the best goaltenders this entire season. That included in the bubble. You start him, and you also have to have Sorokin get adjusted to the National Hockey League ice, because it is completely different. It is much smaller. It is not as wide. It is not as long. So everything is different here in the States, in North America. So he has to get accustomed to that. We'll see how that goes. And I personally believe we will see him in Bridgeport at some point. And I would not be surprised if there is and that's why I think Keith Kincaid being signed by the Rangers is so big, because that's really who I thought the Islanders should have signed as insurance, just in case. Because Sorokin is also waivers exempt too. He can be sent down at any point in time. And you could just pull up Kincaid and be the backup to Varlamov. God forbid.
I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what is Varlamov's cap hit right now?
$5 million. That's
the only way it really makes sense is if why they would want to dump Varlamov is so they have a little bit of money to try to sign some other guys. I just don't know if that's the area you want to cut from. But the problem is I don't know anybody that's taking on Johnny Boychuk and his oft-injured $6 million a year contract.
Yeah, and the only thing too, fellas, is that the only thing we've heard that Mike Hoffman is a very good fit for the Islanders. But then again, where do they get that money from? Let's conclude this. PMAC, Rob DeLuca, your thoughts. We'll start with PMAC here on the Islanders. Again, your arch enemy in terms of teams, but let's hear your thoughts on the cap crunch that Lou Lamoriello faces.
Just to bring up for Sorokin, we're going to go across the Brooklyn Bridge or the Midtown Tunnel, however the Islanders get wherever they're playing, how they get to the Garden. I think with Igor Shesterkin, the Rangers sent him down to Hartford, and it really helped him get used to the North American game. So that'll be good. And if they can keep Greiss and Varlamov to start or sign someone lower cap hit, it'll be good. But with the Islanders, I watched a lot of them during the playoffs, and they play a very good structure on keeping people to the outside. But when they need that goal, they need to find a way to get offense. But how they can do that with the cap and everything, and there's just so many questions. But if I'm an Islander fan, which I am not, I would trust in Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz into getting this team where they are, because they do have some nice pieces. It's just finding a way in this tough cap space to get another piece to help Barzal and get some of that scoring up.
PMAC, Rob DeLuca, your thoughts as we conclude the Islanders segment.
Look, as I know Lou Lamoriello a very long time. I mean, not personally, but you get the point. I'm a Devils fan.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the way you said that was you've known him personally for a very long time.
Yeah, well, it's been a long week.
Maybe on behalf of Islander fans, Rob, you can ask Lou next time you see him about why he hasn't spent any money on free agents the last 2 years.
Oh, sure. Look, let me tell you about Lou Lamoriello. This man does what he does to win. He does not do rebuilds. That's why we saw the New Jersey Devil teams we saw the first couple of years of Corey Schneider, is because he doesn't do rebuilds. Look what happened when he went to Toronto. It was clear they weren't really there. He did everything in his power to get them there. It didn't work. And then he comes down to the island, and he nearly does get the Islanders there. 2 games short of the Cup final. Really impressive. I mean, come on now. I mean, this is just how he operates. You have to trust in him that he will figure a way out of this. Obviously, with very little cap space, moves are definitely going to be coming. You got to wonder if a guy like Andy Green, who Elliot Friedman reported today, had interest in returning to the Islanders, if he even can now at this point. You just don't know. A veteran leader like that is very, very important to a team making deep runs in the playoffs, as the Islanders just did. And let's be real, he scored a couple of key goals. He mattered for the Islanders. So he's going to take some time to think about who he has to move, who he has to try and bring back, and then, of course, take care of his restricted guys.
Let me tell you something, just to conclude this, fellas, is that the three guys that need to be moved in Andrew Ladd, Johnny Boychuk, Nick Leddy were all not signed by Lou. If it was not, and to all Islanders fans out there, I'm sorry, I don't care what any of you say. If it was not for Garth Snow, we would not be in this spot. Yes, I said those words. If it were not for Garth Snow, we would not be in this spot. Why? Because half, if not more, of this roster is his players, is his draftees, are his free agents, his trades. That's him. But now the problem is that the guys did not age well. All of them have not aged well with the exception of Leddy. And unfortunately, Leddy could be kept, but he would now have to be a casualty because he's the most attractive piece. And you have right now combined about $11.5 million tied into both Ladd and Boychuk, and those two cannot be moved. Why? Because they're old and they are oft injured and they do not play hockey well any longer. So now, with this, Lou has a lot of work to do. And $11.5 million could be freed up where they could potentially have, if you do the math, nearly $20 million in cap space to re-sign guys, as we said, like Barzal, Pulak, and Taves, and Andy Green, as Rob DeLuca said earlier. I don't see it happening. Teams are going to want draft capital with this. We saw what happened when Vegas expanded during the expansion draft. Garth Snow had to send a couple of first and a second, along with Mikhail Grabovski, which was full dead money, so it could go on their long-term injured reserve because the Islanders needed space that badly then. At this point, I would not be surprised if Lou has to send a couple of picks. They don't have a second-round pick for next year, and they might have to send somebody who they just drafted. I don't know, Simon Holmstrom, Oliver Wahlstrom, Bode Wildy, who really is on his way. He is coming up. I don't really know what the deal is here, but I can tell you right now, for the Islanders fans out there that are having a hard time with Lou Lamoriello not doing anything, calm down. It's going to take some time. And there's a lot of work to be done, and I do not expect this to be close to done until, I'm going to say, November, even December, and who knows, potentially the first few days just before hockey restarts again. Listen, Johnny Boychuk and Nick Leddy were traded the eve of opening night back in 2014. I'll never forget it. I was jumping for joy. That could be the same thing here. Teams right now are very desperate to get things out, but Lou, he might be able to wait a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick McCormick, everybody. PMAC, I can't thank you enough for coming on here with us to chat about your New York Rangers, to chat about tri-state area hockey. We really appreciate it. Go watch the Yankees. Go enjoy. And even though right now things aren't looking too hot, go enjoy them.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me, Ian, Rob. Fun talking to you. Hopefully we can do this again soon.
There's no doubt about it.
Appreciate it.
Yep, we'd love to have you on again. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Patrick McCormick. As we are waiting for Dennis Bernstein to arrive in our little room here, there's a lot going on here. We were just talking about Torrey Krug, if you will. Who reported that? That was, I believe, who said that? Ian said that, or was that Rob that said that?
No, I said initially what I had seen for a report was that the Krug announcement, or I should say any talks on Krug, we're going to wait possibly until tomorrow. But it appears Rob has some more recent news.
It seems like floating around on the Twitters that we're getting in a 11th hour type thing with talks heating back up. There's no information on where he might be going or who's interested, but supposedly his camp is getting talks back up again. That doesn't mean there's an announcement. There could be an announcement tonight, but it very well could be tomorrow. It seems like within the next 24 hours or so, we're going to hear something about Torrey Krug. This is not something to lose sleep over, I don't think. As of right this second, 7:30 p.m. on Friday, October 9th, you can go to sleep tonight, fans. It seems like we're safe to go to sleep, but anytime we say that, obviously that'll – and Joey, you know how my jinx works. You know we'll have to – at this point now.
So as we wait for DB right now to come on here from the hot stove, we'll give it a little bit of a promo just before he comes on here. The hot stove, ladies and gentlemen, powered by the fourth period, comes to you live Saturday mornings from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sirius XM NHL Network Radio, channel 91. So it's pretty cool stuff that we're gonna have Dennis Bernstein on with us just a few minutes. He's probably just finishing up over there with Sirius XM right now. He's on with Steve Koulias and those guys over there. I don't know what the deal is with Rob DeLuca, how he goes with the "it's over," and I don't.
It's not, well, it worked last night when I said the Dodgers won, hoping that the Yankees game would get pushed to 8 o'clock, but that didn't pan out well.
That did not pan out. So
the Dodgers did win, but the Yankees did not move.
Yeah. So as we wait for DB, let's continue on here with free agents, guys. The biggest thing here, I think today, this was the biggest free agent signing, was Jacob Markstrom in Calgary. And this was a big deal because, and again, I made the joke earlier of, when was the last time that Calgary had a decent goaltender since the likes of Mika Kiprasov? And my goodness, that was, I can think back to maybe my high school days or even early college days, guys. That was, Mika Kiprasov was in his prime back when I was in high school. We were in high school, DeLuca.
Wait, when he was in his prime, we were children. When he was in his prime, we were children. Let's be real here.
Oh,
that's when he got that team to the Cup final.
That's very true.
Mika Kiprasov's an old man.
Well, I mean, look, it's great to have the consistency in that position in Calgary for the first time since Mika Kiprasov. I mean, 2012-13, and there's the man. Speaking of.
Hey. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dennis Bernstein from the fourth period. DB, Happy New Year. We had you on Christmas Eve. We got you on New Year's Day now.
Exactly. I'm on my fourth Red Bull, fellas. It's been a long day, man. Holy cow.
DB, now we have to ask you this. How are you feeling now after your fourth Red Bull?
Oh, I'm great. Sugar-free. So there's not sugar and Red Bull. It's just –
Well, I mean, Joey, he's got to be feeling awfully good after his horse won the Kentucky Derby, right?
Yeah. Come on. Let's go. I was gone last week, though. Got nosed out in the Preakness by a girl horse. But what are you going to do, fellas?
Oh, man. DB, Rob DeLuca, DB.
Hey, Rob. Good to see you, bud.
Pleasure, sir.
Cannot thank you enough for coming on here. Really appreciate it. And Ian, let's get it started. I think you have a couple of questions for the main man, and we'll get to the latest free agents coming up. Hopefully, they get signed. Let's hear it, Ian.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, DB, thanks again so much for coming on. We really appreciate you taking some time and coming on the show. I guess with what I'll start with the one real big free agent signing today with Jacob Markstrom, and obviously he presents a consistency finally. In goal for the Flames, something that Calgary has not had since Mika Kiprasov. I mean, where, in your opinion, does this really pit Calgary in the West? Because there's clearly still some offensive concerns there.
Yeah, I think they need to pursue a guy like Taylor Hall. Here's what I would do. I would pursue Taylor Hall. If I could sign him, I would trade Johnny Gaudreau to Philly for Travis Sanheim. Send Johnny home to Southern Jersey, Philly area. I think that's the issue. But it certainly solidifies their goaltending. And I think what happened with respect to Vancouver is, look, they signed Vancouver's MVP, right? So that's an in-division strike against a competitor who had a really nice season. He was the MVP. The issue with him was that they offered him a little less money. Here's what I understand. They offered Markstrom in Vancouver $5.5 million for 5. But the key was they didn't offer him no movement clause and expansion protection. He did not want to go to Seattle, and he is 30 years old, so 31-year-old goaltender. he would have been a right plucking for Ronnie Francis in Seattle. They wouldn't give him that protection. So he hit the open market, and Calgary was banging on his door from day one. And, the signing period stuff, guys, they got to stop this crap because the agents and teams were talking a week beforehand. So Calgary was ready at the open to offer this guy 6 over 6 with the protection he wanted, and he signed on. So we're going to see. Look, do they have protection in Vancouver right now? Yeah, look, Demko's not a kid, right? He's 25 years old. He had a great 3 games against Vegas, but he's unproven. So to bring in Braden Holtby, and I know Braden Holtby had a shit year last year, but Braden's on a redemption. You're going to get him on a bounce back. So they're not better in goal. They may be right now. They may be better if Demko's the real deal, but we don't know. The issue is, and this goes to not just Vancouver, but every team, Ian. And that's why Mark's in Calgary is you've got $10 million plus tied up in Brett Sutter and Louis Eriksson. That was the whole thing. That means that they had to let go Stetcher. That means they couldn't sign Tanev, right? They couldn't sign Toffoli. And it's not just Vancouver. It's not even mismanagement. Look, nobody saw the pandemic coming. Nobody saw a flat cap for 3 years. But this is the consequence right now that you're seeing. Like, there's been one 6-year deal handed out today, and that was the Markstrom deal. Everything else, the high majority are 1 and 2 year deals. Now, when the big boys come in, like Pietrangelo and Hall, they're going to get long-term deals. But I think you're seeing right now that the GMs are just being austere and very tight with their money right now.
I'd actually like to jump to Pietrangelo here for a second. I was going to say, go from the free agent that signed the biggest contract today to the free agent that we're waiting to sign the next biggest contract. The teams that we continue to hear, and it seems like the only teams that are mentioned with Alex Pietrangelo is either him going back to St. Louis or going to Vegas, because it seems like Vegas is all in on him. A team that I heard just very vaguely from Pagnotta was hearing a name like Colorado involved in that discussion. Is there any traction to the Avalanche and Pietrangelo at all?
No, I can't buy that right now. Maybe that's just the agent trying to make a market here. And Toronto's out of the mix because they just signed TJ Brodie to $20 million over 4. So that's that. He's done there. Guys, I can't see how St. Louis and Pietrangelo can't find middle ground here. He wants to stay there. If he leaves, they're not a contender. Cole Parenko's a good player. I like Vince Dunn, but then Marcus Scandella's a good middle defenseman. They're not a contender without this guy. He's their captain. You can't find middle ground at this point. It's like so. I still think that he's going back to St. Louis. I know Vegas is in the mix, but if you can't move the goalie right now, right? They're having trouble with all the goaltending carousel we talked about today, right? Where's Marc-Andre Fleury landing? Maybe New Jersey, maybe High Devil fan, Rob. Right? Maybe they're a facilitator to a third team. But Marc-Andre Fleury's stuck there. And if you sign him, then what do you got to do? Then you got to trade. If you can't trade Fleury, which I don't think they can right now, then you got to trade Nate Schmidt. Then you got to trade Alec Martinez. And it's not that easy, because if it was that easy, like St. Louis would have traded Tyler Bozak at $5 million and Alex Steen at $5.7 million, and they would have had the money. And I've joked about this for the last week or so, guys. We need to create a 33rd team that we can dump all these contracts to. We can dump Bozak and Steen and JVR and all these other contracts that nobody's going to take right now. And that's part of the issue right now. So with respect to Alex, I think he's going to get a rude awakening here. And I think he's going to wind up in, maybe not rude awakening. The question is, would Alex take $8 million on a 1-year deal, knowing that the pandemic is forcing a lot of these things, and try again next year, play one more season in St. Louis? That might be an option for him. It's difficult, but I just can't envision St. Louis thinking they can be a contender next season without Alex Pietrangelo.
It's tough because, DB, you speak about that 33rd team. If it was only that easy, especially out here on Long Island, Lou would have shipped already Andrew Ladd, Johnny Boychuk, and Nick Leddy all off together just to be able to re-sign Matthew Barzal. Ian, Rob, any other questions for DB, please?
Ian, are you good? Or
no, I could ask him another one or two. I think a name that certainly surrounds DB a lot with regards to on the East Coast, at least, even though that they're tightly cap strapped, are the Islanders, and a name that was linked a lot to the Islanders was Mike Hoffman, and Hoffman is yet to find a home. So who's going to pay him? Does he remain in Florida, or could the Islanders find a way to work around their cap space to maybe bring a guy like Hoffman in?
Well, I think Billy Zito just mentioned on his conference call that he's open to bringing back Dadonov and Mike Hoffman, so that might be a good landing place. And to be frank, Florida needs players. I think if those two guys walk out the door, they're 13th or 14th in the conference. I don't like what they're doing in Florida. They just don't have the right mix of players. Now he's trying to change that, bring in Verhaeghe, bring in Radko Gudas, bring in Vinny Hinostroza. He's definitely doing a facelift on that team. But here's the thing with Florida. If the goalie is going to play and have a above 3 goals against and a 900 save percentage, it don't matter who they change. Like that $10 million goal, you got to play like it. He got to go back to his Vezina days in Columbus. If he doesn't, they're not doing anything. So with respect to Mike Hoffman, I think he'd be a fit in Edmonton. Imagine him on the power play, right, with them. I mean, and they made a good move getting Kyle Turris, right? He's a really good third-line center. I mean, it blew up in his face, Paulie, in Nashville. So that's a good thing. But they need more scoring. I think Mike Hoffman would be a fit there. But I think it's going to be a situation where some of these players are going to come back to the teams. Look, Torrey Krug might wake up tomorrow and saying, what am I doing going to Detroit? And I know he's from Michigan. He went to Michigan State. But, you're going from a championship caliber team to one where you're going to be taking 5 pucks out of the net every night. I mean, you're really going to do that for that pay? You don't want to take a little bit less? So I think with respect to the Islanders, maybe Mike Hoffman, but they can't move like Double J said, they can't move the money. They want to keep that core together. They like to bring back their unrestricted guys. Brassard would love to play there. Matt Martin doesn't want to move, but they just can't do it. It's just not doable this time at this point in time because you got to sign RFAs and they're up against the cap. It's a big challenge for Lou and the Islanders right now because of the situation with the finances.
And thanks, DB. And I would say lastly, I want to mention a name that you've already mentioned about possibly thinking that Taylor Hall could go to Calgary. It seems like he's willing to wait out the market a few days. For a guy like Taylor Hall who really needs to find a home, are there any feelers or favorites, or do you think he's doing the right thing by waiting out the market?
Yeah, I think it's smart. We want immediate gratification, Ian, right? We want everybody signed by 1 o'clock, like Eastern time. We want an hour, everything's done. Take your time. A lot of teams called on him. Upwards of maybe 25 teams made an inquiry on Taylor Hall. I'm not sure he's that player. Look, he's had one great season in New Jersey. Right, he led that team. He was the MVP. I was happy to vote for him, but he hasn't done much since. He didn't do good in New Jersey. They traded him. He wasn't a fit in Arizona. He's going to have to be part of a real championship caliber team to make the money worth it. Now, could he go to Montreal? Yeah, that'd be a nice fit for them. They need scoring on the wing. That's a possibility as well. I think he's going to take his time, and I think you're going to see with Pietrangelo, there's no reason you can't let this wait. Think over the weekend. Your agent gives you maybe the 2 or 3 top choices, and Monday, Tuesday, we get news. So I don't think over the weekend we're going to see all the top value free agents, especially those 2 guys, Pietrangelo and Hall, signing over the weekend. They'll probably take the weekend off, sit with their families, huddle with their agents, and then probably make a decision Monday or Tuesday.
DeLuca.
Yeah, I mean, while we were discussing, we had a small deal break. We had Tobias Ryder is on his way to Buffalo for just $700,000 for a year. So DB, I just wonder, with the situation Buffalo is in, does this sign obviously it doesn't cost really any money, but does it really make any sense for the situation they're in to bring in a guy like Ryder who's not really needed for a rebuild?
Okay, Rob, here's my answer. And I've said this probably for the last 3 weeks. God bless Sabre fans. God bless him. It's going to be tough. You got that was my man, the winger, was he really a $9 million player? Come on. He had one good season of 40 goals. They gave him $63 million. I mean, Jack's going to stay there. I guess he's going to stay there. It's look, that's a team that right now should call up Paperson and CAA and say, what's it going to take to get Tyler Toffoli here? Right now, Tyler, knowing him from he's in LA, he played in LA, he played in Vancouver. He's going to have to break the news to his wife. He's going to be playing in Buffalo. That might be a difficult decision. Right? One of the issues. It's like, we're going to move to Buffalo. Great. But that team, and not only that, their purse strings are tight, Rob. They don't want to spend the money. I wouldn't be surprised that sometimes the Pagulas tap out and sell the team. That's a team that's going to construct, and they weren't that far away. It's just that some of the decisions. And Kevin Adams is a brand new GM, so I'm sure there's some old school GMs trying to circle around, maybe And I think what they really need to do is trade Ristolainen for some offensive help. I think that's the move they need to make. The Arena thing doesn't move the needle for me. They should go out and get a scoring winger to help Jack. At some point in time, Jack's the GM there, right? I mean, you can see what's going on here. Kevin Adams is never GM in his life. Now all of a sudden he's running the team. So I think that there's challenges with this team. They're just the depth isn't there. They've took some gambles, right? The Okposo deal, a disaster. Like Jimmy Vesey didn't work out. Like they've tried. They got Eric Stahl, right? They traded They originally got Marcus Johansson. He's always hurt. So I don't see them as a playoff team. I really don't. And they don't have a goaltender. Linus Lundqvist is not the guy. With all this carousel going on, they didn't even go get a goaltender. Now maybe it's the kid, the Finnish kid in the minors, but they don't have a proven goaltender. So to think that they're going to contend, I think that's a kind of not a desperation move, but as a GM who's just waiting, knowing, and he's thinking, who's got Buffalo at the top of their list? You give me the free agent. I want to play in Buffalo.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, because it's like.
And Jack Eichel's a great guy, such a great guy, Jack Eichel. That the Conn Smythe winner last season, Ryan O'Reilly, had to get traded off the team. That's what's going on in Buffalo. It's a tough situation, and that's why I say, God bless Sabres fans.
Yeah, and I feel for Eric Stahl because he didn't put them on the no trade list because you can only have so many teams on there. He didn't think to put Buffalo there, and there he goes.
But Rob, here's the situation though. Going over to like what happened with Tyler Johnson. So here's how you defeat a no trade clause: you waive the guy. Yeah. And then the team that wanted him picks him up, and they give you some, a fourth-round pick or future considerations, do another deal for some, nondescript, asset you might have. So I think that's one way around it, and you might see more of it as well.
I'd kind of real quick before Joey jumps in, I'd like to just ask like one more, even though this doesn't really relate so much to free agency, but it certainly was a question that surrounded the Sabres for the better part of a couple of months. Do we see down the road somebody like Eichel who says he was sick of losing, leave Buffalo?
Yeah, I think you have that situation in Buffalo. I think you have it in Edmonton. I'm pretty sure that when Jacob Markstrom looked at the defense on Edmonton, he said, I'm not sure I want to go there. Right? I mean, look, Oscar Klefbom may not play again. He may retire. He's 27 years old. His shoulder's all screwed up. They have Nurse, they have Larson. There's a long way to go for that team. They have Koskinen as their only goaltender right now. Like that. So I think you have a situation where you have guys like Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel who have the ear of the owner. He might just say, I'm done. I'm over. And so there's pressure on the GM to get, to build a team quickly, because it could be a situation where Jack says, I'm out, because he has a relationship with the owner. He has a direct line and direct number to him. So that could happen, Ian. It's not going to happen right now because they did. I think Stahl being a calming influence, he's a really good guy. But if they have a 72-point season and they're not playing games of importance by game 60, yeah, I mean, it's the problem when you give a guy who done nothing. I mean, he had a great season this year. I almost put him on my MVP ballot. But when he's done nothing and you give him that money for that long of a term, that's what happens.
DB, first off, extremely happy to see you back home after your long trip in Edmonton and your quarantine of 14 days. I can't even imagine. I got to give you a lot of credit for being in your hotel room for that long. That's something. And
Double J, never again. My wife said, "Look, if it was like this next year." Like when there was another bubble and the Kings won it because you cover the Kings and you know guys on the team, would you go? I'm like, no, I would never go again. Because there was no advantage other than seeing history, being in the building, which I tell you guys, it was like the friggin' Twilight Zone being in that building. First of all, it was 50 degrees in the building. Everybody's shivering, right? Because there's no fans in the building. And it was just totally weird. But not only that, when you walked outside the arena, now this is Edmonton, right? A hotbed of hockey in the nation that has the origins of the game. It was desolate. There was nobody around the building. You walk out, there was nobody there. There's the ice district there that they have some restaurants and stuff. They were half full. It was so weird and crazy. So yeah, being in a hotel room 14 days, it was a sacrifice. It was great. I hadn't been away from home for a month straight in a very long time. I would never do it again, but I was a witness to history, and that was the sacrifice I had to do to witness history.
the coolest thing, and especially again, I follow you on everywhere, and I got to almost live, see what you went through, and that was really a cool thing. Now, heading back over to the hockey side, now you were talking about certain players with term and potentially overpaying. Now, I want to look at Montreal because you were talking about the Habs earlier. And Josh Anderson. Now, that trade with Max Domi, when they traded him to Columbus, they got back in return Josh Anderson. Now, the deal, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was seven years and a term of $5.5 million AAV.
Correct. Right.
They needed that big bulky guy on the wings, and they let's call it got him. What do you think, DB? Do you think that Mark Bergevin overpaid for a guy that is injured?
Mm-hmm. Well, is he the 1-goal injured guy, or is he the 27-goal power forward? Or is he the 17 or 15-goal scorer he was prior to that one big year? He had one big year, and he got paid off it. He is the type of player they need in Montreal because he's big. He's a power forward. They're not a very big team. They need size. That's why they were in on Wayne Simmons. They actually offered Simmons more money than Toronto did at 1.5. I think they offered him 2. So I get what they did. And they traded a guy who was clearly out of favor in Max Domi, right? Like, look at it. Kakanyemi and Suzuki played well in the postseason. Phil Danault is a 3, a 2, a 1, depending on the day, right? He wasn't, and Max Domi's best position is center. Columbus needed a center. And he was playing, if you look at the usage in the postseason against, in that second round against Philadelphia, he was playing 14 minutes a night.
Yeah.
So he was clearly not Claude Julien's guy. And they have a surplus finally at center. So I understand the trade. I would have not given Josh Anderson 7 years. I don't know why they did. I think you could give him 5.5 and 5, and he would have run to the bank with that deal. But they chose to go that route. He is, 27 years old. So, it's tough, though. A player who's injured, who is a power forward at 27, is he really going to last 7 years? I had my doubts about that, but I understand it's not a terrible deal because it does fill a need, and you moved an asset that you really weren't in favor of. So I get the trade. I understand it. I don't think it was a major overpayment on the AAV. I was a little surprised at the term.
DB, a couple of days ago, we had a virtual draft. The draft was supposed to be in Montreal, and unfortunately, due to the current pandemic, everything was virtual. So now your time in Los Angeles, that's where you are. Let's talk a little bit about Quentin Byfield, the first African-American to be drafted that high ever, which was probably the coolest thing that we've seen. Ian and Rob and myself, we were talking about it. I think that was really cool, and to see the reaction from his family, to eventually, to attract more African-Americans to the game of hockey. Because you're the LA insider, you are DB. What are your thoughts to what Rob Blake is doing in terms of the rebuild?
Okay, so Rob and I actually was talking to E.J. Raddick just before a little while ago. He called me on the way home before watching the Yankee game. So it's funny with respect to LA because they have a lot of young assets, a lot of young forwards. And EJ asked, and I followed up with Rob on a Zoom call, like, are you going to, what's the plan here? Like, are any of these, is Byfield going to play next year? Is Turcotte going to play in the big club? Kupari, are these guys going to graduate? And he basically said that the forward depth chart, that the way the season ended is going to be the same next season, at least to start. Right? So maybe you get kids coming up. But to me, what they are, guys, and I'll draw a baseball analogy, right now, the Kings are the Tampa Bay Rays of the NHL. They have all this young talent. They're not big spenders. They need to be like the Dodgers. Because this is what the Dodgers do. Dodgers have a great system, all these prospects. But what did they do? They packaged 4 of them, and they got Mookie Betts. Yeah. That's what the Kings need to do. They need to trade some of this talent and these draft picks for established player. Just one. I'm not telling you just buy Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But you need to go get one established, because last time I checked, this team was 30th. They were 28th in offense. If you're bringing back the same forwards, unless you think there's going to be great progression from a Trevor Moore or an Adrian Kempe, which is not going to happen. Hey, look, maybe Gabe Velarde breaks through and there's a 30-30 guy, and then all bets are off. But that's what I think. So I like what they're doing. They haven't hit the home run. They play small ball. They've gone doubles and singles. And look, who knows with prospects? right? And I will tell you that over the last 5 years, the highest goal scoring forward the Kings have drafted is Austin Wagner. He scored 14 goals, right? The second highest goal scorer of the last 5 years draft is Eric Chernak. And he's in Tampa and he won a cup. So it hasn't come through. Now, you're going to have patience. You got to go through this. It's just that this team has never drafted and developed a big-time scorer. I can go back. I can go back 10 years. The best goal-scoring player they've had in the last 10 years of draft is a guy who's on the market right now, Tyler Toffoli. They just don't, they just haven't looked at that way. No. Part of the issue is Dean Lombardi traded away picks to win championships and try to defend the championships. I get that. But this team has not drafted and developed a star elite forward in a very long time. And that's the challenge, that's the issue. So they're on the right track. I've been the most critical in the market of this team. But if you're going to go with the same roster next season coming in, and maybe you believe in that 7-game winning streak at the end of the season, this team is going to struggle to score again. And again, it goes back to the forwards that they're just, right now, you had Alex Alafalo, who's had a great season, who's a 2020 kid who was an undrafted free agent, do a real good story. Who's to say he won't regress next season and be a 12-12 guy? And then you're really not complimenting. And not only that, the other teams in this division are getting better, except for maybe Arizona, because I guess they don't have any money and they're lucky they're keeping Oliver Ekman-Larsson. But I'm not critical of the organization. I would just like to see, look, Rob Blake, and I'll use another baseball analogy. Rob Blake took one big swing, Ilya Kovalchuk, and it didn't work. It blew up in his face, and it was a disaster. So maybe he's ready to take another big swing here. He's not going to play for Taylor Hall. I get it. I understand it. He says his take is he's going to do this next offseason, which if you do that, that's great. If you want to find out what these kids are about and where they fit in your depth chart, I understand it. I would like to see a little bit more aggressiveness from Rob Blake. He just hasn't done it yet, so he's going to be more patient, and I guess he's got ownership buy-in to still be patient.
DB, one final question before we let you go, just so you can relax for the night, because it's been a long day for you, as you said earlier. 4 Red Bulls in, and I'm sure you're looking to have a cigar and just get off of here. But one quick thing about Kyle Turris, and you were out in Edmonton, obviously, so we'll go there. But Kyle Turris being bought out, and as you said, that blew up in David Poyle's face with that trade as well. But now Ken Holland signs him in Edmonton, and at a very lucrative, I think it was like 1.5 for 2 years or something along those lines. So talk about the impact that Kyle Turris could potentially really have on a team that needs bottom 6 forwards, even that needs second line help as well. How Kyle Turris can make that impact.
He'll make them better offensively, Double J, but this team needs to play defense. And it goes back to a guy like Connor McDavid. Look, Leon Draisaitl is like a star. He could be the offensive player. Connor McDavid is the leader. He's the captain, right? And if you watch him not play defense against Chicago, like there's no way that team should have lost to Chicago. I'm sorry. That Chicago's no good. Corey Crawford, like his save percentage in some games was like under 900 and still won games. Yeah. Connor McDavid, if Dave Tippett's going to be the coach and Dave's a defensive-minded coach, Connor's going to have to play a 200-foot game. He doesn't have to be Jonathan Toews. He doesn't have to be a Selke winner. He's got to show some commitment to playing defense on that team, because if he doesn't commit, who else on the team is going to commit? That's the issue. That's the challenge with this team. And they're devoid of talent. Yeah, Kyle Turris is a good move with the 3C, but he's not a stopper. Like, here's the thing. You're looking to stop a team. You're up 2-1 in the third period, and you need to stop somebody, and you're facing the Pittsburgh Penguins and Gino Malkin's out there. Who are you putting out? You're putting out Kyle Turris to stop him? You're putting out McDavid or Draisaitl? None of those guys play defense. So while it's a smart move, it's a cheap move. It could give them more offense on the team. This team needs they're like Toronto. They need to commit to playing defense. Until they do that, and Connor McDavid has to commit. I'm not asking him to be to win 60% of his faceoffs. I'm not asking him to win Selke, but he's got to have some sort of commitment to playing defense, because he'll lead by example. And then if he's doing it, everybody else in the room will do it. Maybe not Leon Draisaitl, because he's otherworldly when it comes to offense, but that's what's got to change in Edmonton. So a smart move, a value move, but again, a move that unless Connor McDavid and his teammates are going to play better defense, it's going to be the same old story to Edmonton. Yeah, they might get in the postseason, but with that defense, with that goaltender right now, they're going to have to be better defensively up front for them to make any noise in the West.
DB, I can't thank you enough for coming on here following, multiple shows. You were on Sirius XM earlier, but don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow is DB's main show on NHL Network Radio, Channel 91, The Hot Stove, powered by the Fourth Period. DB, give us a little bit of a preview of what we were going to have, what we're going to have tomorrow morning, starting at 11 a.m.
Yeah, so tomorrow I assume we're going to have on our buddy Irv Kafar from Vancouver to talk about all the activity with the Canucks. Aaron Ward, the two-time winning Stanley Cup winner, former defenseman for the Red Wings. He's a great analyst with respect to the NHL. We might have Braden Holtby coming on talk about his signing in Vancouver. So 11 to 1 Eastern time, 8 to 10 in Pacific time zone. But always great being on the primetime rundown with you, Double J, and the rest of the crew.
DB, thank you so much. Get some rest, and we'll speak to you soon.
Okay, boys, take care. Thanks for everything.
Thanks, DB. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, Dennis Bernstein from the Fourth Period. The Hot Stove, join him tomorrow morning, as he said, most likely, or could potentially have Vancouver Canucks goaltender Braden Holtby on the show tomorrow. Check it out, 11 a.m. Eastern time. And Rob DeLuca, your first encounter with our insider DB. Talk about your experience.
That guy's a legend, all right? That was awesome. All right? I love this guy. He said he was just straight to the point and spoke his mind. It was beautiful.
Well, I will tell you this. He lives out in Los Angeles, but he is a native New Yorker. He is from the Bronx, so he's got it in him to just discuss everything sports, which is really cool stuff. So, guys, as we said earlier, we cannot thank everyone enough for being on the air with us here this evening. One more thing that we want to go through. Are there any other free agent signings? There is one. Tomas Nosek back to Las Vegas, 1 year, $1.25 million.
Right as we let DB go.
And say it again?
Right as we let DB go, it happened.
Exactly, right. So we let DB go there, and Tomas Nosek, 1 year, $1.25 million. And you know what? I have to say this, fellas, with the likes of Vegas, it's very difficult to see Derek Engelland gone, and he was a big part of not only who they were when the shootings happened back in 2017. But I want to say this, and for those out there that may not really get what I'm saying, I think of the Vegas Golden Knights, and maybe I'm showing my age, but I don't think of Mark Stone. I don't think of Max Pacioretty. I think of the guys like William Karlsson. I think of the guys like Nate Schmidt. I think of the guys like Shea Theodore, even Braden McNabb, who had a horrendous tenure in Los Angeles, which we could have brought up to DB because he knows all about McNabb, how he had a couple of good seasons, and then all of a sudden he went, he crashed the plane there. And then and then you think of guys like Alex Tuck and Tomas Nosek, and he really goes in there. Derek Engelland, I guess we wish you the best, most likely heading off into retirement. Native Las Vegas, a Nevadian. I don't know, Ian. Is that
not important?
Born in Nevada. How's that? Born in Nevada.
Homegrown in Nevada.
There you go. Whatever it is, and it's a good thing that we have someone that can speak English on this show, or can speak generally, Ian Schraier. So, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot thank you all enough for joining us here on our Free Agent Frenzy special. We had Patrick McCormick on here. We cannot thank him enough for joining us here, and also the Fourth Period's Dennis Bernstein, as always. We cannot thank him enough for coming on, as this was his last stop in a long day, as he said. 4 sugar-free Red Bulls in, and also coming on here to conclude his long day of the free agent frenzy. Not a lot of moves today, but there were some pretty good moves, as we see a lot. Again, still guys on the market that include the aforementioned Alex Pietrangelo, Corey Schneider, Taylor Hall, Corey Crawford, Tyson Berry, Torrey Krug, Mike Hoffman, Alex Galchenyuk, Sami Vatanen. The list continues to go on. Fellas, any last words before we get to the closing credits?
No, I think this was a great show. This is my first time doing the NHL free agency frenzy with the Primetime Rundown. I thought it went great. It was great to have PMAC on. Always a pleasure to see DB. Just going to have to get his horse tips the next time I talk to him for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, and Rob, any last thoughts before we head off into the credits?
Yeah, this was a great time. We got through it. 2 hours, a beautiful show. We did a great job, and the guests were awesome. And I would call my first Primetime Rundown free agent frenzy a raging success.
There we go. That is where we are at now. And for those that know all about DB's horse, I'm assuming that when DB saw that Authentic did not come in first, this was his face. That was his face. He did not like that, or but we'll see what happens with the Breeders' Cup in another few weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, again, there's a lot going on here on the Eastern Observer. This coming Tuesday night, starting at 6 o'clock, the Essential Wrestling Podcast comes to you live at 6 p.m. Tuesday, October 13th, the day after Columbus Day, right here on the Eastern Observer and the I-95 Sports Network on Zingo Television, channel 198. One channel up on your dial. Also, ladies and gentlemen, as well, in the beginning of the show, we did not do this, but also we cannot thank Black Cats NYC and their newest hit single, Dirty Little Hipster, which is available on Apple Music, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Google Play, Pandora, Spotify, and Deezer. Please check out Andrew Giordano's newest hit single, Dirty Little Hipster. Really, really cool stuff. And one final thing also in our cross-promotion title, with the New York Professional Scouts Association, we will be checking out the likes of Mike Piazza's scout, the one that signed Mike Piazza. How did he get signed? I'll give you a little tip, everybody, or a little hint. He signed for $15,000, and that's all that I will give you now. And there was also a little bit of a different setting, if you will, in terms of where he signed his first contract. The late Richard Dick Teed, he will be the man of the minute tomorrow, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Eastern Observer and the New York Professional Scouts Association channels. Ladies and gentlemen, for one final time right here on Blackjack Television, for all of us here at the Blackjack Media Group, Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, I'm Joey Jarzynka, and for Dennis Bernstein, Patrick McCormick, and for all of us here at the Blackjack Media Group, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We'll see you next time.